In 2026, a series of American restaurants are facing the risk of closing down. The places that used to be packed on Friday nights are now as empty as a library. And it's not because the food is so good that people are reluctant to queue, but because they can no longer afford the bill. A very ordinary meal with just a burger, salad, and 2 drinks. But the number on the bill came to $62. And your brain starts calculating like an accountant. If I eat here twice a week, then it's like losing a month's rent. Many customers expressed their anger, even viewing this risk of collapse as a price to pay. The restaurant prices have tripled in the past 5 years. We refused. The food is too expensive. The quality is too poor. The waiting time is too long. And the atmosphere is bland and corporate. The problem is that everything is getting more expensive, except for wages. Then the POS machine turned back, looking at you as if challenging. 18% tip, 20%, 25%, 30%. You stand there torn between being kind or protecting your wallet. But the funniest thing is, even though they charge that much, the restaurants are still closing down in droves. Why don't they lower the prices? Why do prices keep going up? Today, I will tell you the real story behind the... Don't take your eyes off it. If you feel that dining out now resembles a financial decision more than a meal, then congratulations, you are completely sober. Just look at the complaints and grievances of customers, and you'll see the picture emerging as clearly as a market report. Someone said, "You used to pick up a fast food lunch for a reasonable price. Now, the prices are comparable to a sit-down restaurant." Others say, "Used to go to Denny's for breakfast, but I haven't gone since before the pandemic. So, I recently went to Denny's because I just remembered them. Breakfast for 2 was nearly $50 plus a tip. And there are also people who don't hesitate to say it outright. You used to pay extra for the convenience. Now you're just paying for the greed of executives." But the issue is not just the price. If the restaurant is expensive but good, people are still willing to pay. What really makes the audience angry is the feeling of being treated like a walking wallet. A meal for 2 now easily reaches $50–60. That's enough money to buy a shopping cart full of groceries at the supermarket. Enough ingredients for several days. Instead, you receive a plate of food that looks beautiful on Instagram, but tastes like it was designed to survive in a truck rather than to make you happy. And the scariest twist? Even the options that were once considered cheap are disappearing. Some people say that even a small portion at Panera costs $15. Subway has places where they sell sandwiches for nearly $20. So, what is the normal price then? This is when the big question arises. If customers are leaving because it's too expensive, why doesn't the restaurant lower the prices to bring them back? Or are they caught in a cost spiral that no one can see? If you've ever looked at a bill and wondered, am I just paying for food or paying for a system that's collapsing? Please comment below. And if you want to continue peeling back the layers of secrets in this industry, just hit subscribe, not to support me, but so we don't get charged exorbitantly in silence. Because the next part is where everything starts to get dark. If you think restaurants are collapsing, that's not quite accurate. The reality is like a cold culling. Not all restaurants are disappearing. Only the mid-range ones, those that once thrived on the consumption habits of the middle class. Fine dining is still alive. The rich still dine, still order steak, still order wine. But they can only have one meal each night, and they don't eat at Chili's or Applebee's. On the other hand, fast food still exists because it sells something very strong: speed and convenience. You stop by, grab your stuff, and leave. No need to have expectations. But what about mid-tier restaurants? This is where everything falls apart. Because mid-tier is stuck in the middle like a broken bridge. Prices climb close to fine dining levels, but the experience drops down to near industrial food levels. One comment bluntly stated, sounding like a cold blow, "Mid-tier restaurants are basically fast food disguised with a 50% markup. Let's put it into a more relatable image. You spend $60 for a meal for two, and with tip and tax, it comes to nearly $75. That's enough money to buy a whole bag of groceries at Costco. Enough to last you a few days, but at the mid-tier, you get a decent burger, frozen fries, and a soda priced like a bottle at the supermarket. It's like buying an old car, but being charged the price of a new one just because they polished it better. It's like buying a used car, but being charged the price of a new one just because they polished it better. And when consumers start to wake up, they switch to an all or nothing strategy, either extremely cheap or extremely high end. And when consumers start to wake up, they switch to an all or nothing strategy, either eat extremely cheap or eat extremely high end. Mid-tier has become the most meaningless choice, as it no longer has a reason to exist. The frightening question is, if the middle class withdraws from the game, who will keep these restaurant chains alive? And if they can't lower prices, what will they do next? Because in the next part, we will touch on what frustrates people the most. Tips are turning into a kind of disguised mandatory fee, and that's when customers really leave. And then, just when you thought you had survived the shock of the menu prices, the second blow comes. Not the food, not taxes, but the payment machine. It was turned toward you like a pre-written sentence. 18%, 20%, 25%. 30%. The numbers flashing on the screen, like the betting boards in a Las Vegas casino. The only difference is that here you don't gamble to win money. You gamble to avoid being seen as stingy. A straightforward audience member commented, "Getting shaken down is the new restaurant experience." And here's the point that makes the story dangerous. Customers don't dislike tipping because they dislike the service staff. In fact, many people still want to pay a fair wage, but they hate the feeling that tipping has turned into a disguised mandatory surcharge masked by politeness. Let me do the math for you so you can visualize it easily. A meal costs $60, plus tax it comes to about $70. If you tip 25%, the bill jumps to nearly $90. That means with just a touch, you just paid enough for a fast food meal for the whole family. And the most bitter part, you don't know if you're paying for good service or paying to be left alone. A tip is originally a gesture of gratitude, but now it feels like a moral test during a tense economic period. Are you kind enough to tip extra while you yourself are also counting every penny? And when the feeling of dining out turns into a financial negotiation, customers start to withdraw. Not because they don't like the restaurant, but because they don't want to be put in an awkward situation every time they have dinner. The question is, if tips have become the last straw, then what is behind the restaurants pushing that pressure onto customers? And why do all roads ultimately lead to the same gigantic supply chain? In the next part, we will meet the true antagonist of this story. Have you noticed something strange? Whether you step into a Mexican restaurant, an Italian eatery, or an American diner chain, sometimes everything has the same vibe, the same kind of salty flavor, the same tenderness, the same layer of sauce that are similar to each other, as if the whole of America is having dinner in the same gigantic kitchen. And then you scroll down to the comments section, and you see a phrase repeated like a code among those who have worked in the industry. Everything comes from Cisco. Another person was even more straightforward. Restaurants are just competing over who can present Cisco food the best. If you've never heard of the name Cisco, then this is the plot twist of the story. Cisco is not a restaurant. Cisco is the lifeblood behind hundreds of thousands of American restaurants, a colossal food distributor, along with US Foods, that nearly controls the supply chain of the entire industry. Imagine Cisco As the Amazon of restaurant food, do you need meat, vegetables, cheese, sauces, frozen goods, even napkins and gloves? One call, one truck, everything delivered to your door. Convenient to the point of dangerous. Because when the entire industry depends on a few large suppliers, prices are no longer determined by the market, but by the bottleneck holders. And here is the scary part. After the pandemic, Cisco recorded strong profit growth, with a period of increase up to 159%, thanks to a strategy of increasing profit per case, pushing inflation costs of about 13-15% down to restaurants. And then restaurants pushed it down to customers. So you think you're paying for cuisine, but in reality, you're paying for a beautifully packaged logistics system. A piece of steak placed on a porcelain plate, but its soul resembles cafeteria food. So the question is, if Cisco is the supply valve, and the restaurant is being squeezed from both sides, rising ingredient costs and customers leaving, is there any way for them to lower prices? In the coming minutes, a truth will be revealed that will make you even more uncomfortable. Not only have prices increased, but the way restaurants cook has completely changed. Let's continue. If Gordon Ramsay steps into the kitchens of many American restaurants in 2025, I bet he won't be yelling at the chefs anymore. He would look straight at the microwave, pause for a few seconds, then want to retire it permanently. Because this is the biggest paradox in the restaurant industry today. Prices are rising like fine dining, but the preparation method is like a frozen meal in the supermarket. And what frustrates the audience the most is not the fact that the food is pre-prepared, but it's the feeling of being deceived. You pay for a restaurant experience, but receive something that looks like it was just reheated behind a secret door. Online, people are starting to mention a seemingly harmless but extremely important name, Restaurant Depot, like Costco for restaurants. That place doesn't just sell ingredients, it sells almost complete dishes. Dumplings, ravioli, spring rolls, pastries, tiramisu, the ones that usually take the most effort to make. And the process is sometimes frighteningly simple. Defrost, heat, plate, charge. Now, let's do the math. You spend $15 to $20 on an appetizer, but in reality, what you're eating might just be a bag of frozen food worth a few dollars, dressed up with sauce and served on a porcelain plate. And that's when the customers exploded. One person said very honestly, "If I want frozen food, I'll buy it myself at Walmart for $3. Don't sell it to me for $0 and call it the chef's special." This sounds like a joke, but it's the most accurate indictment. What's more, this is not a rare occurrence. Shows like Kitchen Nightmares have previously exposed scenes where restaurants used microwaves as secret tools to speed up service and cut costs. But back then, it was just a trick used by a few bad restaurants. But now, it resembles an economic model. So the question is, if restaurants have to rely on a reheated economy to survive, is there any way they can lower prices? If you've ever eaten a dish and thought, why does it taste like frozen food? Please comment and share your experience. And if you like this kind of straightforward breakdown, subscribe to the channel, because the next part is the biggest twist. Why they can't lower prices even though customers are leaving in droves. And this is the biggest question of the entire video. If most customers are leaving because the prices are too high, why doesn't the restaurant simply lower the prices? Lower the prices to bring customers back, increase revenue, and save yourself. Sounds reasonable. But the truth is, they almost can't. And the answer lies in 3 layers. Just like a case with 3 layers of culprits. Let's take a look at it. First layer. Operating costs are indeed rising. And they are rising from all sides. Rent is like a steel clamp tightening around the neck. Insurance increases. Employee salaries are increasing. Electricity. water, gas prices are rising, payment system fees, delivery fees, software fees, all of them have increased. And most importantly, the prices of raw materials from major distributors are also increasing. You can't sell a burger for $9 if the rent alone eats up most of the profit. The restaurant no longer has a safety margin. They are walking a tightrope, and beneath them is a deep abyss. Second layer, they have built an entire business model based on high prices. For many years, the restaurant learned that customers would pay, so they priced the menu as a habit. But if they lower the prices now, they won't just lose revenue, they'll lose their image as well. It's like a luxury brand suddenly reducing its prices by 50%. People won't thank you. They'll ask, wait, was I overcharged all this time? And that's why many chain owners would rather close a few locations than lower prices across the entire system. The third layer is the scariest. A risky feedback loop. Fewer customers, they raise prices to compensate. Prices go up, fewer customers. Then they raised the prices again until the restaurant was completely empty and the doors were locked forever. That's a sinking ship, and they're trying to pump in oxygen by drilling more holes. So what about you? What do you think? Do you think the restaurant is collapsing due to inflation? Or because they have priced themselves beyond the reach of the average person? In the next part, we will unveil a bigger picture. This is not just about restaurants, but a sign that the middle class is being squeezed more and more each day. And at this point, we must acknowledge a chilling truth. The issue of empty restaurants is not just about the food. It is a social signal, a major crack in what was once called the normal life of the American middle class. In the past, restaurants were where families met after a week of work. It's where you take your wife to celebrate an anniversary. It's the place you take your child to eat after the game. It's not a luxury. It is a part of the rhythm of life. But now, eating out is like buying a luxury item. You have to weigh, calculate, and ask yourself whether it's worth it or not. A meal for two costing $60.70 doesn't sound too crazy, until you remember that it's also the cost of gas, electricity, or part of the rent. And then there was a comment that left people silent for a few seconds because it hit the deepest fear. The moment Chinese takeout gets expensive, we're really in trouble, because Chinese takeout used to be the Americans' escape route. A quick, cheap meal that saves a long, tiring day. When even that refuge disappears, it means the middle class has no place to breathe. This is no longer a story about a fancy restaurant. This is a story about a society where small joys are being valued like luxury goods. Do you think this is just a temporary phase? Or is it a sign that the American dream is shrinking day by day? If you want to understand why Americans are reacting so strongly, the next part will show you. They are not just complaining, they are protesting with their wallets. What are Americans really doing? In the moment when the restaurant industry truly began to tremble, Americans no longer just complained, they are taking action. In the comment section, you see phrases repeating like a slogan of the era. Stop eating out. Don't eat out anymore. Vote with your wallet. Vote with your wallet. And the line that sounds both funny and painful, we have food at home. Go home and eat. This is not just a casual remark. This is a silent consumer strike. When restaurant prices rise to absurd levels, Americans do what they always do best in a crisis. Optimize to survive. Meal prep is back. Cooking at home is back. And the new symbol of savings appears in the comments like a mantra. A $5 Costco rotisserie chicken can be divided into 5-6 meals. Think about it. On one side, a restaurant meal costing $60.70 for 2 people. On the other side, $5 lasting nearly a week. It's no longer a choice. That is instinct. And the question arises, if millions of people simultaneously turn their backs on the restaurant, what will happen next? Who will survive? Who will disappear? Because the end of the video will conclude with a cold, hard truth. The restaurant industry isn't losing customers because people hate eating out, but because they are starting to learn how to survive. If you've ever voted with your wallet like that, comment one word: same. So, in the end, are restaurants dying because of inflation, or because they have priced themselves beyond the reach of the average person? And the bigger question is, if even a modest meal becomes a luxury, what will the middle class have left? Now I want to hear from you. Do you still eat out? The last time you looked at the bill and thought it wasn't worth that much money? And who do you think is the real culprit? The greedy restaurant, the exclusive supply chain, or simply the changing rules of the economy? Comment below, because I believe the comment section is even more interesting than the video. If you like direct, quick, and in-depth analysis, like an investigative report, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because the next video will be even hotter. And a small note, this video is only for sharing and analysis based on public information and community experiences, not aimed at attacking any specific individual or business. See you in the next video.